My friends, for generations we have repeated a familiar phrase, seek first the kingdom of God. We have heard it from pulpits, from scholars, from religious teachers throughout the centuries. We have sung it in hymns, quoted it in prayers, placed it upon walls and bookmarks and sermons, and yet, for all our reverence, we have missed its meaning almost entirely. When we look honestly, without defense, without tradition, we discover something striking. Humanity has been seeking this kingdom in every direction except the one Jesus intended. Some have searched for it in the sky, imagining a place prepared somewhere above the clouds. Others have believed it to be a reward given after death, a destination reserved for the morally qualified. Many have tried to earn it through religious effort, ritual, belief, devotion, performance, and still others have searched for it in the improvement of the human scene, better bodies, better finances, better emotions. But hear me, the kingdom of God is not found in the sky. It is not found after death. It is not earned by behavior, and it is not attained through the manipulation of outward circumstances. The kingdom of God is not a location. It is not a reward. It is not a destination. The kingdom of God is a state of consciousness. Until this is understood not merely as a theory, but as revealed truth, your spiritual search will remain full of effort, full of frustration, full of longing without fulfillment. For you will be seeking a spiritual reality in the material direction, and what is spiritual can never be found in matter. What is infinite can never be found by searching outward into finitude. What is omnipresent can never be discovered as something apart from your own being. And so the spiritual seeker, sincere as he may be, continues to pray, continues to hope, continues to seek, yet finds no lasting peace, no enduring transformation. Why? Because we have been seeking the kingdom where it is not. We have treated the kingdom of God as something to reach out toward instead of something to awaken to. Let us hear the Master's own words again with new ears. The kingdom of God is within you, not above you, not in a church, not in a book, not in a future moment, within you. When this truth begins to dawn, even faintly, something shifts in the heart. A subtle recognition arises. I have been living as though God was separate from me, as though divine fulfillment were a distant prize. But if the kingdom is within, then the search must turn inward. The turning must be from the outer to the inner, from appearance to essence. This moment, this recognition, is the beginning of spiritual life. Everything before it is religious aspiration. Everything after it is spiritual realization. My friends, the spiritual life does not begin when you learn how to pray, or how to meditate, or how to believe. It begins when you understand where God is. It begins when you recognize that the source of your peace, your supply, your healing, your harmony is not separate from you, and therefore cannot be given or withheld by something outside you. The kingdom is not something added unto you when you become worthy. It is something revealed unto you when you become still. And so I say to you, if we are to seek first the kingdom, we must first know what we are seeking. We must know where it is located. We must understand that this kingdom is the divine awareness already present within your being, waiting only for recognition. You have not been separated from the kingdom. You have been distracted from it. You have been taught to look outward. You have been conditioned to believe that spiritual fulfillment lies in the improvement of the external world. But Jesus did not say, seek first the world, and all these things shall be added unto you. He said, seek first the kingdom. For he knew that when the inner reality is realized, the outer conditions naturally come into order. This is the message I bring to you now. The kingdom of God is not something you must travel toward. It is the truth of your own consciousness, awaiting your recognition. And in the moment, the very moment you begin to understand this, even imperfectly, something begins to unfold within you. A shift, a softening, a quitting, a dawning, for you have stopped searching outward and have begun awakening inward. My friends, this is the misunderstood kingdom. This is the truth religions have repeated but seldom comprehended. This is the revelation the Master offered, that God's presence is not to be attained but acknowledged, not achieved but realized, not invited but recognized. The kingdom of God is a state of consciousness. And when you begin to seek there, you begin a journey unlike anything the world can give. My friends, once we have understood that the kingdom of God is a state of consciousness, not a location, not a destination, there arises the necessity for a profound transition, one that every seeker must eventually make. It is the shift from searching outward to turning inward, from looking for God in the world to recognizing God within your own being, from chasing divine favor to awakening to divine presence. This is not a small shift. It is not a subtle adjustment of belief. It is the great turning, the reversal of the entire human approach to God. For centuries, humanity has imagined that spiritual fulfillment lies outside itself. People have looked to teachers, to traditions, to rituals, to places, to holy objects, even to the sky, hoping to find the presence that alone satisfies the soul. And yet all the while, the Master's voice has repeated again and again, the kingdom of God is within you, not around you, not ahead of you, within you. But you see, the mind is deeply conditioned to look outward. It has been taught from childhood that answers come from authority, that good comes from outside, that security is dependent upon external sources, that peace is achieved by controlling the events of the world. And so even the spiritual seeker begins his path by trying to gather spiritual truth in the same way he gathers material possessions by reaching outward. But hear this truth: nothing of spirit can ever be found by searching outward, for spirit is not in the realm of outer appearance. Spirit reveals itself only within the silence, the stillness, the awareness of one's own consciousness. No person, no book, no ritual, no place can give you the kingdom, because the kingdom is not given, it is recognized. Your task is not to acquire God. Your task is to awaken to the God who has been the life of your being since before the foundation of the world. When this realization even begins to arise in consciousness, the entire spiritual path changes. You stop measuring your progress by the improvement of outer circumstances. You stop believing that the presence of God can be proven by better finances, improved health, or more harmonious relationships. You stop thinking of God as a power to be used and begin to understand God as the very life that is living you. And so the search turns inward, not with strain, not with intensity, but with a gentle recognition. If the kingdom is within me, then I must learn to be still enough to feel it. If God is the substance of my being, then I must stop looking for God as something separate. If truth is within, then truth will reveal itself when I cease projecting it outward. This is the moment when spiritual life begins to blossom. The seeker no longer runs from teaching to teaching, hoping that another idea will bring peace. He no longer prays to a distant God, hoping that some heavenly force will intervene. He no longer begs for answers from the world, for he has discovered that the world can give nothing of lasting value. The world can offer only temporary forms, and forms change. But consciousness, your awareness of God, this is eternal. This is unchanging. This is the real. When the seeker finally makes this shift, something remarkable happens. The noise of human seeking begins to quiet. The inner turmoil of searching for answers fades, and a subtle presence, gentle, soft, unmistakable, begins to reveal itself, not as an emotion, not as a sensation, but as a deep knowing, as though something within you whispers, "I am here. I have always been here." This is the beginning of true spiritual perception. This is the moment when the soul recognizes its source, and from this moment on, life no longer feels like a search for God. It feels like a relationship with God. The great shift is not about learning new ideas. It is about laying down the ancient habit of looking outward and turning with reverent stillness toward the inner kingdom. And the moment you do, you discover that the presence you sought has been closer than your own breath, closer than your thoughts, closer than your heartbeat, closer than your identity. For God is not found by reaching outward. God is found by sinking inward into the quiet depth of your own being. This is the beginning of all spiritual unfoldment. The willingness to stop seeking God in the world and begin recognizing God in consciousness. My friends, this shift, this turning, is the moment you begin to walk the path Jesus walked and taught. It is the gateway through which all spiritual understanding flows. And once this realization is made, even faintly, your life can never again be lived as it was before. For you have discovered the direction in which truth reveals itself, not outward, but inward, not through seeking, but through recognition, not through striving, but through awareness. This is the great shift. This is the path to the kingdom. And this is where the journey truly begins. My friends, when a person begins to turn inward, when the search for God shifts from the outer world to the inner kingdom, there is an unmistakable consequence. It is the first and perhaps most blessed sign that the truth is dawning in consciousness. Fear begins to lose its voice, not always suddenly, not always completely, but undeniably. Let us understand why. Fear exists only in the belief of separation. Fear is born the moment we imagine a life apart from God. Fear grows in the soil of duality when we conceive of two powers, good and evil, two forces, spiritual and material, two sources, God and something that can oppose God. Fear is not natural to the soul. Fear is the product of ignorance, ignorance of our oneness with the infinite. When the kingdom is believed to be outside of you, separate from you, distant from your being, you cannot help but fear. How could you not fear when your safety depends upon a God who must be convinced, persuaded, or called down from afar? How could you not fear when your good seems dependent on the instability of the world? How could you not fear when you see power in disease, power in circumstance, power in people, power in finances, power apart from God? But the moment you begin to sense, just sense that the kingdom is within, something in the heart loosens, a knot begins to dissolve, the breath becomes softer, the mind becomes quieter, for you are beginning to perceive that you are not separate from your source. This realization is not dramatic, it is not emotional, it is gentle, it is soft. It rises like dawn light, not like a thunderstorm. But it changes everything. You may discover one morning that a familiar anxiety simply did not appear. You may notice that a situation which once terrified you now passes through your mind without gripping you. You may find that you do not respond to threats, real or imagined, with the same intensity. Why? Because something within has whispered, there is no power apart from God. This is the first fruit of recognition. Not yet full illumination, not yet the complete disappearance of fear, but the beginning of a great quieting. Fear begins to subside because you are no longer living as a creature dependent on external forces. You are beginning to behold yourself as an expression of the one life, the one presence, the one consciousness that governs the universe. And with this recognition, spiritual struggle begins to dissolve. Struggle is the attempt to unite yourself with what is already one with you. Struggle is the attempt to attract what is already present. Struggle is the attempt to gain God's attention when God has never removed his attention from you. Struggle is the attempt to reach a presence that has never left you. All struggle is based on the belief that God is separate, and when that belief begins to weaken, the struggle ends. You begin to notice that you no longer pray with urgency or desperation. Prayer becomes less of a plea and more of a resting in what is already true. You stop begging for God to intervene in your troubles. Instead, you begin to turn within with the quiet assurance that the presence you seek is already the life of your being. You begin to see that nothing is gained through force, that nothing is achieved by anxious effort, that nothing of spirit is obtained by pushing, straining, or manipulating. You discover that the moment you relax into the inner presence, peace begins to flow from depths you did not know you possessed. This is the end of spiritual struggle, not because the outer world has changed, but because you have changed in relation to it. You no longer look at appearances with the same fear. You no longer see circumstances as powers. You no longer believe that life can act independently of God. The world has not changed, your consciousness has. And as your consciousness changes, you discover that fear does not need to be fought, overcome, or cast out. Fear disappears the moment you stop believing in a second power. Fear dissolves in the light of recognition. Fear dissolves when you recognize that you live in God and God lives in you. Then the great truth dawns. I do not need to struggle. I do not need to force. I do not need to hold life together with the strength of my own will. There is a presence governing all that concerns me, and that presence is within. This is the first inner change. This is the beginning of peace. This is the silence that welcomes grace. My friends, when fear begins to quiet, even slightly, you are already living in the consciousness of the kingdom. And from this point forward, everything unfolds more gently, more harmoniously, more gracefully, not because the world has become kinder, but because your awareness has become clearer. Fear fades, struggle ends, and life begins to flow from the center of your being, where the kingdom has always been. My friends, once fear begins to quiet, once the soul senses even faintly the presence within, the second great transformation unfolds, one that is deeper, more intimate, and more sacred than anything that precedes it. It is the unveiling of your true identity. For centuries, you have lived under an illusion about who you are. You have believed yourself to be the body you inhabit, the thoughts you think, the emotions you feel, the history you carry. You have believed yourself to be shaped by family, conditioned by society, molded by circumstance. You have accepted the world's verdict about your worth, your destiny, and your limits. But when the recognition of the kingdom begins to dawn, the veil over your identity gently begins to lift. You begin to sense, just sense, that you are not merely a person trying to reach God. You are the place where God expresses himself. This is not a belief. This is not an affirmation. This is an inner recognition that rises unbidden from the depth of your being. A knowing that cannot be explained by the intellect and cannot be denied once it is felt. You discover that your life, your real life, is not the personal changing identity you have carried for years. Your real life is the divine life expressing as you. This is the revelation Jesus declared when he said, I and the Father are one. He was not proclaiming specialness. He was revealing the universal truth about every soul, that the essence of your being is not human, but divine consciousness individualized. When this realization begins to dawn, you find that you are no longer comfortable identifying yourself as a weak, limited, struggling creature. You begin to lose interest in defining yourself by your past, your wounds, or your accomplishments. You begin to sense that who you really are has never been wounded, never been diminished, never been incomplete. You see, the human self, the one you have believed yourself to be, has been a mask, a costume, a garment worn temporarily. Beneath it is the true self, untouched by time, unscarred by experience, unaltered by circumstance. And as the inner kingdom reveals itself, the true self emerges not in pride, not in ego, but in quiet recognition. You realize, I am not seeking God. I am an expression of God's own being. I am not trying to attain life. I am already alive with the one, life. I am not searching for wholeness. I am the manifestation of wholeness itself. I am not lacking anything. I am the embodiment of the infinite supply that is God. This recognition transforms everything. You stop trying to add spirituality to a flawed person. You stop trying to fix yourself. You stop trying to become worthy. You stop trying to repair your identity. This is not a belief. This is not an affirmation. This is an inner recognition that rises unbidden from the depth of your being. A knowing that cannot be explained by the intellect and cannot be denied once it is felt. The only thing damaged was the belief you held about who you were. This is divine grace, because you begin to understand that your spiritual identity was never damaged in the first place. Let me share a simple truth that every mystic must eventually realize. You are not becoming spiritual. You are recognizing that you have always been spirit. This is why Goldsmit taught that healing is not the improvement of a human being, but the recognition of one's spiritual identity. You are not transforming into something divine. You are awakening to the divinity that has always been the essence of your being. This is the unveiling of identity. This is the moment when you begin to see yourself through the eyes of truth rather than through the lens of the world. You begin to recognize, I am spiritual being. I am divine consciousness in expression. I am the life of God, appearing as an individual identity, without separation, without division, and something extraordinary follows. The moment you recognize your true identity, you begin to see the same identity in others, not their personalities, not their behavior, not their bodies, but the same divine presence shining behind their eyes. You begin to meet the Christ everywhere because you have met him within yourself. My friends, this unveiling of identity is not the end of the spiritual path, but it is the foundation upon which everything else rests. Once you know who you are, you can no longer be held by fear, controlled by circumstances, or deceived by appearances. And when this truth begins to shine in consciousness, a great peace comes with it, because you stop striving to correct what was never real. You stop trying to perfect the human mind, which was never your true identity. You stop trying to save the personality, which has always been a temporary formation. You begin instead to live from the awareness that the infinite expresses as you. This is the second great change. This is the awakening of identity. This is the realization that I live, yet not I, but the Christ liveth in me. My friends, when the truth of your identity begins to dawn, when you recognize that your life is the life of God, expressing as you, another profound change takes place. This transformation marks the beginning of a new mode of living, a new way of being, a new relationship with life itself. It is the shift from human effort to divine grace. This change is not something you accomplish. It is not something you practice into existence. It is something that happens the moment you stop believing that your life depends upon your personal will. Human effort is the belief that you, as a separate self, must struggle, push, manipulate, and control in order to create harmony. Human effort says, if I do not hold my life together, it will fall apart. Human effort believes that outcomes depend upon one's ability to force them into alignment. But my friends, all human striving rests upon a single illusion, the illusion that you are the source of your own life. When identity shifts, when you sense that your being is rooted in the infinite, you begin to realize that the life you thought you were controlling was never yours to control. It was the divine life unfolding through you. And so the repairing that takes place is not the repairing of your true being, but the repairing of your perception. And when this truth begins to shine in consciousness, a great peace comes with it, because you stop striving to correct what was never real. You stop trying to perfect the human mind, which was never your true identity. You stop trying to save the personality, which has always been a temporary formation. You begin instead to live from the awareness that the infinite expresses as you. Actions arise without strain. Decisions arise without anxiety. Solutions arise without force. And events arrange themselves with an ease that cannot be explained through human logic. And slowly, quietly, life begins to flow with a new rhythm. Grace is not something God bestows upon the worthy. Grace is the natural activity of the infinite when the personal sense of self steps aside. As Goldsmit taught again and again, divine activity replaces human effort. Let us understand this deeply. And so the repairing that takes place is not the repairing of your true being, but the repairing of your perception. And so the repairing that takes place is not the repairing of your true being, but the repairing of your perception. You begin to live out of a consciousness that has no boundaries, no limits, no exhaustion. You begin to act not as a weary human mind, but as an instrument through which divine wisdom flows. As Goldsmith taught again and again, divine activity replaces human effort. Let us understand this deeply. And so the repairing that takes place is not the repairing of your true being, but the repairing of your perception. The shift from effort to grace does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you withdraw from life. It does not mean you sit in meditation waiting for the world to take care of itself. The shift from effort to grace does not mean you become passive. It does not mean you withdraw from life. It does not mean you sit in meditation waiting for the world to take care of itself. Human effort strains. Grace unfolds. Human effort worries. Grace knows. Human effort plans frantically. Grace responds wisely. Human effort seeks outcomes. Grace expresses truth. No, it means you act from the center of peace rather than from the edges of fear. It means you act from the sufficiency of God rather than from the insufficiency of ego. It means you trust the inner impulse rather than the anxious mind. Human effort plans frantically. Grace responds wisely. Human effort seeks outcomes. Grace expresses truth. This is not poetry. This is spiritual law. When this shift takes place, you discover that your life begins to have a certain rhythm, a certain order, a certain flow, not because you have mastered a technique, but because you have surrendered the false belief that you are the one who must direct the universe. This is the freedom the mystics discovered. This is the ease the scriptures describe. This is the peace Jesus spoke of when he said, "My yoke is easy and my burden is light," because the life lived by grace carries no burden. The burden was the belief in separation. Once that belief fades, grace becomes the natural movement of your being. And from that moment on, your life unfolds with a harmony you could never have engineered by effort alone. My friends, when consciousness shifts, when you recognize the kingdom within, when fear begins to quiet, when identity becomes clear, when grace replaces effort, another profound change reveals itself. It is not something you do. It is not something you make happen. It is something that occurs as naturally as dawn follows night. Your outer world begins to rearrange itself without force. Human beings have always believed that the way to improve life is to work on conditions to fix them, to adjust them, to push them, to manipulate them, to control them. And because of this belief, the world has become exhausted. Individuals are exhausted. Nations are exhausted. Everyone is trying to shift external circumstances in the hope that harmony will emerge. But my friends, you cannot change the picture on the screen by painting over the screen. You must change the film, and the film is consciousness. And so, the third great change that arises when the kingdom becomes conscious is this. You stop trying to live your life, and you begin allowing life to live you. But humanity has insisted on doing the opposite, changing the outer in the belief it will alter the inner, improving the world in the belief it will heal the soul, adjusting circumstances in the belief it will create peace. Yet no one has ever found lasting harmony that way. You cannot force the external into order when the internal remains in conflict. But the moment you recognize the kingdom as consciousness, a new truth begins to operate in your life. The outer world reflects the inner state, not because you attempt to manifest something, not because you visualize outcomes, not because you try to create a different future, but because the nature of consciousness is expression. The outer world, the realm of conditions, circumstances, events, is nothing more than an image formed by the inner state. This is the spiritual principle Jesus attempted to teach again and again. As within, so without. According to your consciousness, be it unto you. This is not magic. This is not metaphysical technique. This is spiritual law. As you rest in the realization of your true identity, something begins to unfold without effort. All relationships heal or naturally dissolve. New opportunities appear without striving. Financial supply arrives through channels you did not anticipate. Health begins to improve, not through mental manipulation of the body, but through the realization that your true being is spiritual substance, untouched by disease. Why does this happen? Because once you live from the awareness that God is your consciousness, you no longer interfere with the natural flow of divine order. All this harmony arises from the belief that you must take control of life. All harmony arises from the recognition that divine intelligence governs life. You are not creating new good. You are removing the obstruction, your fear, your effort, your separation consciousness that prevented the good from expressing itself. I want you to hear this. You do not make harmony come. Harmony is always present. Your recognition of the kingdom allows it to show itself, and so you begin to witness something remarkable. Problems that once seemed immovable soften. Situations that felt hopeless gently reorganize. Circumstances shift in ways you could never have predicted. Not because you manipulated them, but because you stopped resisting them. As the inner world finds its peace, the outer world mirrors that peace. Perhaps you have experienced moments like this, a solution that arrives the moment you cease worrying, an unexpected answer that appears after you surrender your need to solve, a healing that comes when you stop fighting the appearance of illness, a provision that flows when you stop fearing lack. These moments are not coincidences. They are glimpses of spiritual law in operation. When your consciousness returns to its natural state, oneness, peace, presence, the outer world aligns itself accordingly. And please understand, this is not about perfecting conditions. This is not about making life look a certain way. This is not about creating the ideal human picture. It is about allowing divine order to express itself. When you stop trying to fix life, life fixes itself. When you stop trying to control outcomes, right outcomes unfold. When you stop striving to create harmony, harmony appears as naturally as a flower opening to the sun. The rearrangement of outer conditions is not the goal, it is the side effect. The goal is consciousness, the result is harmony. Many students come to me asking, how do I change my life? And I tell them, stop trying to change your life, change your consciousness. When you recognize the kingdom within, the outer life will take care of itself. This is the fourth great change you experience as the kingdom becomes conscious. The world you once resisted, fought, and feared begins to unfold with ease. The world you once tried to bend into shape begins to shape itself according to the divine pattern within you, and you discover, perhaps for the first time, what it means to live in a universe governed by spirit, not by human will. My friends, as the kingdom within becomes more real than the world without, a fifth transformation emerges, one that marks a profound shift in your relationship to life. It is the movement from reacting to resting, from resisting to recognizing, from seeing life as a series of problems to seeing it as a continuous expression of divine order. This is the end of what I call the problem mindset, that deeply conditioned tendency which causes human beings to interpret every appearance as something to fear, something to fix, something to fight. For the greater part of your life, you have been taught to react. Someone speaks sharply, and you react. A financial pressure arises, and fear reacts. A symptom appears in the body, and anxiety reacts. A loss occurs, and grief reacts. A threat is perceived, and self-defense reacts. This reactive nature is not natural to your being. It is the reflex of separation consciousness. It is the reflex of the belief in two powers, one good, one evil, one God, one problem. It is the reflex of the assumption that appearances possess power over you. But hear me, nothing in the external world has power until your consciousness grants it power. A problem can only exist in the mind that names it problem. The moment you behold any appearance without fear, without resistance, without judgment, it loses its ability to disturb you. And when it loses its ability to disturb your consciousness, it loses its ability to persist. Non-reaction is not apathy. Non-reaction is spiritual mastery. It means that you no longer accept the first impulse of the human mind as truth. You no longer jump to conclusions based on the senses. You no longer trust appearances more than the presence. You pose. You turn within. You acknowledge there is no power apart from God. This appearance has no authority over the infinite. It means that you no longer accept the first impulse of the human mind as truth. You no longer jump to conclusions based on the senses. You no longer trust appearances more than the presence. You turn within. This is non-reaction. This is non-resistance. This is the end of the problem mindset. It means that you no longer accept the first impulse of the human mind as truth. You no longer jump to conclusions based on the senses. You no longer trust appearances more than the presence. You turn within. Jesus taught this principle in the simplest words: resist not evil. He was not asking you to tolerate injustice or ignore harmful behavior. He was revealing a spiritual truth. Evil has no power unless you grant it power by opposing it as something real. Non-resistance is not weakness. It is the recognition of spiritual reality. Resistance is the belief that something out there can threaten what is in here. But when you know that God is the center of your being and that nothing can enter consciousness uninvited, resistance becomes unnecessary. You no longer see sickness, you see the spiritual wholeness behind the appearance of sickness. You no longer see lack, you see the infinite supply underlying all seeming shortage. You no longer see conflict, you see the divine presence hidden behind confused human behavior. You no longer see threats, you see illusions dissolving in the light of awareness. And the very moment consciousness stops naming something a problem, it begins dissolving. You see, the problem mindset is not the presence of difficulty, it is the belief that difficulty is separate from God. And once that belief collapses, the difficulty cannot remain. This is why so many students suddenly find that things they once struggled with no longer trouble them. Not because the outer world changed first, but because the inner habit of reacting to life weakened, and now you begin to live differently. Life may present situations, but you no longer see crises. Life may bring challenges, but you no longer interpret them as danger. Life may show you appearances, but you no longer mistake them for reality. You discover an inner stillness that has nothing to do with circumstances. You discover a quiet watching that allows life to unfold without fear. You discover the capacity to remain centered in the midst of noise, anchored in the midst of change, free in the midst of appearances. This is the fifth great change. The ending of reaction, the ending of resistance, the ending of the problem mindset. You no longer live as a creature swept by the storms of the world. You live as consciousness, beholding the passing shadows, knowing the sun behind them cannot be touched. And from this inner stability, a new life begins to emerge. My friends, once you have passed through these inner transformations, once fear softens, identity awakens, grace flows, and non-reaction becomes possible, you find yourself standing in a new relationship to life. It is a relationship the mystics have known for centuries. It is a condition Jesus described when he said, "I am in this world, but not of it." You discover that you now live in two worlds simultaneously. You walk in the visible world, fulfilling duties, tending relationships, handling responsibilities, yet you are rooted in an invisible kingdom, a silent presence, a deeper reality that cannot be seen with the eyes or grasped with the mind. You live in the world of time, but you are anchored in the timeless. You live in the world of form, but you rest in the formless. You live in the world of appearances, but you belong to the world of spirit. And the mark of a spiritual life is not withdrawal from the world, it is awareness of the world within the world. This inner awareness becomes the foundation of all action, the background of all experience, the quiet center from which you live. It is not constant thinking. It is not repeating spiritual phrases. It is not trying to stay positive. It is simply a state of remembering that the presence is here, remembering that the kingdom is within, remembering that your life is the life of God, remembering that nothing external can add to or take from your completeness, remembering that appearances are not power, remembering that all good flows from the invisible into the visible. This remembering is not effort. It is not strain. It is not discipline in the human sense. It is simply a gentle turning of the heart toward its source. Just as you do not force your lungs to breathe, nor your heart to beat, nor your eyes to see, so too the awareness of the kingdom becomes a natural rhythm of being. You begin to carry the presence with you, not as a thought, but as an atmosphere. Where you walk, peace walks. Where you speak, clarity speaks. Where you listen, compassion listens. Where you rest, grace rests. This is the meaning of practicing the presence, not a practice of doing, but a practice of being. A practice of remembering who you are and where you dwell, remembering that the presence is here, remembering that the kingdom is within, remembering that your life is the life of God, remembering that nothing external can add to or take from your completeness, remembering that appearances are not power. Remembering that all good flows from the invisible into the visible. Just as you do not force your lungs to breathe, nor your heart to beat, nor your eyes to see, so too the awareness of the kingdom becomes a natural rhythm of being. You begin to carry the presence with you, not as a thought, but as an atmosphere. Where you walk, peace walks. Where you speak, clarity speaks. Where you listen, compassion listens. Where you rest, grace rests, remembering that the presence is here, remembering that the kingdom is within, remembering that your life is the life of God, remembering that nothing external can add to or take from your completeness, remembering that appearances are not power, remembering that all good flows from the invisible into the visible. All of this now arises from the inner world. And here is the great paradox. Because you no longer depend on the outer becomes harmonized. Because you no longer seek your good from the world begins to reflect the good already established within. Because you no longer fear losing anything, you begin to experience security. Because you no longer cling to relationships, your relationships flourish. Because you no longer fear lack, supply flows naturally. Because you no longer deny appearances, appearances lose their power. You have become like a tree rooted in the invisible soil of spirit, unmoved by the winds of circumstance. How do you maintain this inner awareness? Not by effort, but by recognition. Not by constant mental repetition, but by the quiet remembrance that the kingdom is within you even now, even here, even in the midst of this very breath. You pause for moments throughout the day not to ask anything, not to get anything, but simply to rest in the presence. Father, you are here. Spirit, I am yours. The kingdom is within me. Where I am, God is. I and the Father are one. These are not prayers for help. They are acknowledgments of reality. And each acknowledgment opens the inner chamber a little more. Over time, this awareness becomes continuous, not because you maintain it, but because you no longer forget it. This is the moment you realize you have crossed a threshold. You live in the visible world, but you no longer belong to it. You belong to the kingdom. You belong to the presence. You belong to the truth that has revealed itself within your own consciousness. And from this point on, life is not the same. You are not the same because your home is no longer the material world. Your home is the kingdom, and you carry that home with you wherever you go. This is the sixth great change, the ability to live in the world without being bound by it, the ability to act outwardly while remaining centered inwardly, the ability to move through life with the calm assurance that the invisible is more real than the visible. My friends, this is the fruit of continuous inner awareness. This is the life Jesus lived. This is the life the mystics tasted. This is the life that is now unfolding in you. My friends, we have walked together through these unfoldments not as steps to achieve, not as lessons to master, but as revelations of what is already true within your own being. The kingdom has never been absent from you. It has never been distant. It has never withheld itself. It has never waited for you to become worthy. The kingdom has always been the life of your life, the soul of your soul, the breath within your breath. Only your attention wandered. Only your mind forgot. Only your fear created the illusion of separation. The kingdom has never been absent from you. It has never been distant. It has never withheld itself. It has never waited for you to become worthy. You are no longer seeking an outer God. You are no longer pleading with a distant power. You are no longer striving to make life obey the will of your human effort. Instead, you have begun to recognize that God is the consciousness of your being, that the kingdom is the center of your identity. that your life is the instrument through which the infinite expresses itself. And so now, at the close of this journey, I invite you to take the final step, not outwardly, but inwardly. It is not a step of action, but a step of surrender. Not surrender to fate, nor surrender to external conditions, but surrender to the presence that has always lived at the heart of your being. This is the invitation. Father, live thy life through me, not as an act of piety, not as a religious formula, but as a recognition of the spiritual truth of your existence. You are not here to bend the world to your will. You are here to allow the will of the divine to express through you. You are not here to force outcomes. You are here to bear witness to the natural unfolding of grace. You are not here to make life conform to your desires. You are here to let consciousness reveal its own perfect harmony through you. You see, the kingdom does not come because you work for it. The kingdom reveals itself when you cease interfering with it. Every moment you pause, every time you turn within, every breath in which you acknowledge the presence, every instant when you choose recognition over reaction, every day you rest in the truth of your identity, you are allowing the kingdom to live through you. This is the essence of the mystical path. Not to live your life, but to live the divine life unfolding in you. Not to seek your own good, but to reveal the good that has always been present. Not to become spiritual, but to express the spirit that is already your nature. My friends, the kingdom is not something you enter. It is something that awakens within you as you become still enough, receptive enough, surrendered enough to let it shine. So as we close, I leave you not with instructions, but with an inner knowing. The kingdom is within you. The presence is your life. The truth is your identity. Grace is your activity. Peace is your atmosphere. Love is your essence. Oneness is your reality. Now simply say within yourself, not as a method, but as a recognition, I live, yet not I. The Christ, the presence, the kingdom, lives. It's life as me. My friends, the kingdom is not something you enter. It is something that awakens within you as you become still enough, receptive enough, surrendered enough to let it shine. Every moment you pause, every time you turn within, every breath in which you acknowledge the presence, every instant when you choose recognition over reaction, every day you rest in the truth of your identity, a life lived from within, a life lived through grace, a life lived as the expression of the kingdom of God. Welcome home to yourself. Welcome home to the presence. Welcome home to the kingdom within.